Well, it's funny, dude, because since the last time I was on, this has been kind of like the knock on me in a way now.
Is that your comedian?
You're just a comedian.
You're
this
my
guy's not an
emotional
expert.
support comedian.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Have you ever been
It feels
emotional
weird.
support comedian?
It feels weird doing this without Doug, to be honest. It seems kind of wrong. But that's been like essentially that's like the knock is like, yeah, but you're acting like you're an expert, but you're just some comedian. And it's like, no, that's the point. That's always been the point. Like, yes, I'm just a comedian. I'm not an expert. And still, being not an expert, hand me your favorite Warhawk, and I will tear them to shreds because it's actually not that hard. And like these people aren't really experts either.
Well, also the problem with that is these people that are talking about these things are talking about people not being experts while they're not experts.
Yeah.
There's, what does Doug have a degree in? English?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Sam Harris is a neuroscientist. There's all these different people who have, expertise in one area that is pretty much outside geopolitical, world politics and international relations and chaos and war and the military-industrial complex. And like these are very, very complex, sophisticated, nuanced discussions that you have to have when you're talking about these things because there's so many different factors at play. There's so much money. There's so much bullshit in terms of like what's the truth, what's the narrative, who's pushing the narrative, who's being paid to push the narrative, which is really weird. There's so many of these fucking online influencers that I don't even think are really human beings that have like prominent accounts.
Yep. But then there's also it's a convenient kind of way to dismiss somebody.
Of course, instead of addressing the facts.
Well, I thought it was I thought was really funny to me was that so like a few days after the last time after me and Douglas Murray debated on the show, he went on Bill Maher's show. And so it's like after having this whole thing, the whole 45 minutes opening the show about how you comedians don't know what you're talking about. Says don't know what you're talking about while he's smearing two people who he's never heard of and doesn't even know what they do or whatever. But not the best way to make an appeal to expertise. But no, he doesn't have a problem with Bill Maher doing it because he agrees with him. So the issue isn't really being an expert versus being a comedian. Konstantin Kassin went on this whole thing about expertise and all of this, and it's like, he also started as a comedian. Why all of a sudden does this standard only apply to me and only when I'm talking about Israel? It never applied to me when I was talking about COVID. It never applied to me when they agreed with me on stuff. Right. They would just go, look, Dave, breaking it down. But now there's this one topic that one guy is not allowed to not be an expert on, and it happens to be this one topic that the entire population is turning on. I shouldn't say the entire, but
it's
huge
super
numbers.
When someone attacks what you do professionally versus what you're actually saying.
Yeah.
Why not just dispute what he's saying instead of this appeal to authority?
Right.
Like you're not an expert.
But also, to ask that question is to answer that question.
You can only ask me a few things in life that I can give you definitive answers on. And even then, I might have to refer to expert. Like if you want to ask me about judo, I've been doing jiu-jitsu since 90. I think I started in 97, somewhere around then. 96, maybe. I don't know shit about judo.
Right.
I know how to do a few hip tosses, but when someone is doing something, I don't even know what it's called. If I go haragoshi, I might get it wrong because haragoshi might be legs on the outside versus leg on the inside. Wrestling, I got to defer to DC. Even in martial arts, I'm not totally an expert.
Yeah, and then there might be somebody who is totally an expert, say a wrestler who went to the Olympics,
right,
and was a total expert, or a coach or something like that, total expert in wrestling, and they could still get something about MMA completely off,
or jiu-jitsu.
Right, because
it happened in the last fight, in the last UFC card. Daniel Cormier didn't know about the dead orchard. So he thought this person was fine because they had two arms in while they were caught in a triangle. I go, no, this is a real submission. This is fucking dangerous. There's this guy, Nathan Orchard, who figured out how to do a triangle with two arms in, and it's replicable. A lot of guys do it now. And I think it was a lady at the last UFC had it. And I was like, oh, shit. And Daniel didn't know it yet. There's a couple other things, like the buggy choke. If you don't know about jiu-jitsu and you see a guy who's on his back and he's getting smothered, but all of a sudden he reaches under with his leg, and I'm going, oh, and you don't know what's going on. Like, that's a fucking choke, like a really dangerous one. Ty Ruotolo gets you in that, you're Fucksville. You know, there's guys, so it's like, there's areas of expertise, even in areas that I'm an expert in, that I have to call on other people. Like, this is a stupid argument. Like, what are the facts? Does that submission work? Is that genocide?
Right.
Like, what is, you know, what's going on? Were you funding Hamas? Is Hezbollah a proxy of Iran? Did Iran get the money to do this when Biden released the funds? Because who's allowed to be an expert on all these things?
Yeah, and then of course there are things like do you support lockdowns? And like, in order to have, say, an expert opinion on this policy, it's like, okay, well, you'd be like, they'd say we're following the science. You know, so in other words, they have an epidemiologist or something like that who's arguing lockdowns will cut down on the transmission of the virus. You know, forget they turned out to be wrong, but leaving that aside, you're like, okay, but are they also an economist? Are they also a specialist, a sociologist, a specialist in childhood development who would tell you what closing the schools? Oh, who's the person who has expertise in every single one of those fields? Doesn't exist. There isn't an expert in all of those fields. You know what I mean?
That was the problem with that time, because that time everyone was so fearful, and the news was pushing fear, and it was clearly a narrative. I forget who it was, but some health official was being interviewed recently, and he said that during 2020 that Anthony Fauci said to him, the problem is Americans aren't scared enough, which is crazy to say. It's a wild thing to say, that your goal is to make people more fearful. So you're trying to put out a narrative that makes people more fearful, which, by the way, fucks with your immune system in a gigantic way. Not good at all to be scared. I don't know how many people got really, really, really sick from COVID because when they got it, they freaked the fuck out and they couldn't sleep and they thought they were going to die and they were riddled with anxiety. And that makes you attack people around you, and then you look for a solution. And when these trusted institutions, which up until 5 fucking years ago, I was 100% on board with everything, with vaccines, with every medical innovation, other than psychiatric medications, which I think are pretty much overprescribed. All of a sudden, everyone's like hoping these people have the answer. So anybody who's like, but there's this guy, Jay Bhattacharya, you know, he's also an expert. No, fuck you. Yeah. Fuck you. It's like an anti-science, trust the science, COVID denier, vaccine denier. It just became this fearful because everybody just responded to the fucking media, because everybody's too tuned in to all of this negative shit, man, all day long.